What's going on, guys? Chandler here. So this is going to be my new segment on my YouTube channel called First Listen Review that is taken from my $5 tier full album reactions. So I react to the entire album, and then at the very end I give my overall thoughts and initial thoughts and a score on the album as a whole. So again, if you do like what you see and want to support the channel going forward, head over to patreon.com/ChandlerBurtonEntertainment. This is exclusive to the $5 tier. Again, you get a full album reaction, review, and a whole bunch of other perks as well if you guys are interested. And again, there's always a link down below in the description and in the pinned comment. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the review, and thank you all so much for watching. Alright, my friends, again, Currents and their brand new album, The Death We Seek. Definitely one of my most anticipated albums of 2023. As I mentioned in the beginning, it took me a little while to get into Currents, but now that I am fully invested, they have become one of my favorite metalcore bands as of late. I just love their familiarity, their technicality, and I love the lyrics they bring to it here. It's just really intense and just good metalcore. There's a reason why people call these the metalcore kings, because they really are bringing something really cool to the table. I haven't read much about this album. I think overall the reviews have been fairly positive from what I've kind of seen, but I haven't really gone in depth to read any kind of reviews. As I mentioned, I know The Way It Ends, some people didn't like that album. I personally enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. So I'm excited to see what they bring to the table with this full-length album. It's about 40 minutes long here, and we are going to start with the title track. So again, Currents, The Death We Seek. Let's pop it off in 3, 2, and 1.
A few moments later.
And there it was, my friends. That was Currents, The Death We Seek. Their third, well, they've had some other stuff before, but I guess with this lineup, this is their third studio album on Sharp Tone Records. Nothing better than an album just taking you on just a really solid journey, and it's a really awesome journey that I'm glad that I took. You know, I really enjoyed this album. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but it is pretty dang close to it. So I'm actually really excited to talk about it. So my first listen review of this album is coming up next, so stick around for that. Alright, my friends, let's go ahead and talk about Currents and their new album, The Death We Seek. Again, we just got done jamming the entire thing. Again, I am really glad that this is a journey I took, because I thoroughly enjoyed this album all the way through. I'm going to give you my positives, give you some cons, my top 3 songs, and then I'll give you kind of some overall thoughts and a score, and we will go from there. So, of course, let's start off with the positive here. And number one, absolutely, I gotta give it to Brian's voice on this, man. Not only just his screaming, but his vocal melodies as well. I just loved how he incorporated all of the singing and screaming together. Singing and screaming is not easy to do. You gotta have that mental fortitude to switch back and forth. That can be very difficult. Brian not only can do it perfectly, and not only, I've seen him do it live. I haven't seen the band live, but I've seen videos of them live, and he can absolutely do it the entire set. I really wish their tour was coming through to where I was living, because I think that would be a show I would really want to go to. But I love how, honestly, he was able to take, honestly, just his normal scream, and then he has, some deathcore screams, and I really love that we got a lot of high screams, especially, on Living in Tragedy. That felt like a deathcore song through and through, and I was as I said in the reaction, I was dude, a lot of people are talking about, Will Ramos and those kind of things, but it's dude, Brian is really good. He can do, everything. He is probably the most versatile vocals we have in the scene. I absolutely love that. I also love the vocal melodies on this. Something on Unfamiliar or Over and Over or So Alone. Those choruses are so captivating, and they're so catchy, and they're so filled with so much heart that you can really feel what they're talking about. And I love that he's able to bring that emotion out in his voice. It also feels they're okay, we're gonna scream this part because we're angry about something, or we feel really passionate about it. And the singing, I also feel they were okay, we want to be passionate about this, but in a different sort of way. Absolutely loved every aspect of Brian's voice on this album. Top tier, absolutely incredible. He killed it, and he is wonderful. So props to you, dude. I'd also say, kind of going back to it a little bit, I love that there was a blend of a little bit of deathcore on this album, and some metalcore. There was a good blend of it as well. This album was really heavy. Honestly, I know Currents has always been a very melodic, kind of atmospheric metalcore band. But this one was really heavy. I mean, really, really heavy. I mean, obviously, I'm not even talking about like Vengeance or anything like that. But just even like some of the verses, they're just heavy. And I thought that was really cool. And definitely with Brian's vocals, it definitely felt, deathcore at parts. And I think that's going to be really cool for a lot of people that really want something heavy from this band. But then there's people like me who don't mind the deathcore parts of it. I really prefer the metalcore side of things, but like there is something for everybody on this album. If you're like a well-seasoned metalhead, like if you are like metalcore, deathcore all the way, this is going to be an awesome album for you. I mean, this was an absolutely fantastic listen. So I love the blend of that. I thought that was really cool, and it didn't feel crowbarred. I thought they did a really good job of incorporating that. If that's what they were trying to do, that's what it sounded like to me. I thought they did a great job. Again, the guitar solos and the guitar work on this album is absolutely phenomenal. Currents has such a unique sound to them here that like when you hear a certain part of a song, it's Currents. Like they'll do like, for example, like Beyond This Road, pretty simple breakdown that does like a really cool guitar moment in there. I'm like, it just feels like Currents, and I think that's really cool that Currents has that unique sound that people know who it is. Like when they hear the guitar work, like, oh yeah, that's Currents. And again, a lot of bands can't really say that. A lot of bands, a lot of the bands sound the same. And Currents has a couple of moments on this album where it does sound kind of same to other bands that I've heard. But overall, Currents does have that unique style that a lot of bands are really craving to find. And I think that's really cool. So it's cool to be like, oh yeah, that's a Currents moment. Or you hear that in another song, like, oh, that sounds like Currents. And it's like, that's really cool that they've reached that level in their career where people are like taking a lot of inspiration for them. So the guitar work on this album is great. The riffs, the guitar solos, everything about it was just absolutely fantastic. I thought it was really cool. And then I would say, honestly, the last thing I'll say pro-wise is that really like the lyrics on this album. One thing I've always liked about Currents is that they just kind of say it like it is. Like if they're angry about something, like they just say it. They don't hold anything back, and I think that's a really cool like thing about their music. An example, I think one of the biggest examples is either like The Death We Seek, the title track. I mean, that's just a really intense song. And then honestly, for another example would be like Over and Over, like that chorus, it just kind of talks about like giving up. And it's done in such a beautiful way that it just really impacts you as a person. And for me, who does not play a guitar, who can do like screaming vocals and those types of things, like I'm not like a music guy per se. So for me, my biggest things, I love breaking down the lyrics, and I gotta say the lyrics on this album were phenomenal. A little bit sad and a little bit dark, but I think necessary for the times that we're living in. So I will say, as much as I did love this album, I mean, no album is perfect, and these are just a couple of things that kind of stick out to me as a con, per se. It doesn't really weigh down my score of what I've already have down, but just a couple of things that I kind of noticed. Number one, the production, it is good, but I really feel like sometimes it's just kind of a hit or miss. I've been noticing that lately with a lot of records where I just feel like the production is hit or miss. I think I'm just so spoiled by Drew Folk and Tyler Smith, like the way they do things, or like Andrew Wade. Like I feel like I'm just so spoiled by those guys that I feel like if no one goes to them, I'm just like, the record sounds kind of weird. But overall, this record does sound good. I just feel like, again, there's a couple of songs on here, for example, like Beyond This Road. I just feel like in the beginning, like the screaming was really cool, but I felt it was so buried in the mix, it was kind of hard to hear Brian. But then there was moments where you can hear him perfectly, but then there's other songs like So Alone where the screaming sounds in the forefront and everything sounds balanced. So it felt a little imbalanced to me at certain points. Also on like Gone Astray, I feel like the singing on that again was just a little buried in the mix a little bit. But I mean, overall, like again, it's still listenable. Like it's not bad by any means. Honestly, most metal bands nowadays aren't going to really have like terrible production. I mean, obviously, you want to have something really good and polished, because again, with this music scene, you have to be able to hit home every time with an album, or it could be tragic for your band. But for me, like, it was just a little bit hit or miss. I think Chris Wieseman did this album, because I know he does his own music, the same with Shadow of Intent. So not that it's bad or anything. I just felt like, again, some of the vocals were a little bit mixed in with the instruments a little too much, a little hard to hear on some of the songs. And then I would also say some of the songs as well do have kind of a similar structure to them. While they do have cool moments in them, for example, like, the guitar work sounds different than, this song, that song. I felt like when it came to, like, a lot of the verses, for example, like, a lot of the verses, like, for example, it was, like, Unfamiliar and Remember Me and those types of things. Like, really cool. And there's some other songs on the album as well that do this. It starts off with, like, a good singing verse, chorus, screaming, verse and kind of the same thing over and over. So it gets kind of predictable. So some of the songs do have a little bit of similar structure. But again, to counter argue that, it's like, what else can they do? They can either do like, screaming in both verses, singing in the chorus, or vice versa. So again, that is kind of in counter argument. But again, that is something that I kind of notice as a con on this album. Again, it doesn't lower the score that I already have. Just a couple of things that kind of stuck out to me. So my top 3 favorite songs from this album. Again, this is another album where it was really hard to pick a top 3 because I legitimately enjoyed this entire album all the way through. But I think I'm going to go with these 3 for right now. Again, it always changes. But again, this is just a first initial listen of what I really like. So number 1, Living in Tragedy. I loved how heavy that song was. I love that cool like electronic background. Love the breakdowns. Great chorus. Sound like a Motionless in White chorus, which I was all about. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So that song was so sick. And then the next song I'm picking, did an absolute 180 with Unfamiliar. Definitely had that beautiful, verse in the beginning, a great chorus, had an awesome guitar solo. Like, that song wasn't anything too crazy. That's what I'm saying. Like, Currents, they have their own sound, but it definitely, they borrow elements from other bands for sure that sound kind of similar. But this one was just executed really well, and I think if you have good execution, it's catchy, it's engaging, I think you can still create a great song that is familiar, but also, just really, really good. And I feel like Unfamiliar is that song for Currents. I thought that was really, really, really good. And then I would say, honestly, Over and Over, I really like the chorus on that, as I talked about in the beginning in my pros, where I love how the chorus is very eye-opening. It's very kind of tragic, kind of dark, but again, the overall song itself is just really, really good. But again, those are my top 3 songs that stuck out to me. Again, those are always subject to change, but again, for right now, those are my top 3 songs off of Current's new album, The Death We Seek. The Death We Seek reminded me why I love metal music so much. It had catchy choruses, it had heavy moments. It was a blend of super heavy, super melodic, and again, this is the kind of music that I love to listen to, that I love to make, that I enjoy listening to on the daily, not only when I'm working out, but just even like around my house. Like, I absolutely love this type of music. So this album reminded me like why I love doing this channel. Like, I love reacting to metal. I love talking about metal. So this album really reminded me of why I love this music so much, and I thought that was just a really cool feeling as I'm going through listening to this album. That's what I meant by in the beginning, where like I took a journey going like, not that my love for metal ever went away, but like it just kind of reminded me again, like, this is where I need to be, and I absolutely loved this album. I thought it was super cool. I know, kind of talk about a little bit, with the way it ends. I know a lot of people don't really like that album, but for me, I liked it. Again, there were a couple of songs on there, in my personal opinion, like Kill the Ache or Let Me Leave, which just didn't really hit for me personally. But I feel like on this album, I feel like all the songs hit so much better. I feel like it's better put together. I think it has better moments on this album than The Way It Ends. Again, not that I don't hate that album, but compared to this one, I would absolutely say The Way It Ends is the weakest of the 3 main albums. I'm not going to count I Let the Devil In, but out of the 3 main albums, I got to say The Way It Ends would be a little bit weaker. I don't know if I like The Death We Seek more than The Place I Feel Safest. Those are, right now, I have to listen to a little bit more to make that decision, but as a first initial listen, as a guy who loves metal and absolutely adores this band, this album was an absolute hit for me. It's not perfect by any means, but it is pretty dang close to being perfect, and I really have a very, very high feeling that this album is going to make it on my top 10 albums of 2023. Don't know where I would put it yet, but man, I am very confident that it is going to make it on there somewhere. I'm going to give Currents, The Death We Seek, an 8.5 out of 10. Just beautiful all the way through. Couple of misses here and there. There may be a few songs I may not go back to, but again, just on the first initial listen, that may change. I do plan on listening to this album over and over throughout this year, so we'll see if that changes. But overall, man, this is a masterclass of what modern metal should be.